Picture this. It is the middle of the 9th century. The cold winds howl across the rugged coast of Northumbria. A lone Viking chieftain, tall, fearless, legendary, stands bound before a pit writhing with venomous snakes. King Aella of Northumbria, his face twisted in triumph, has just captured the man the world would later call Ragnar Lothbrok. No ordinary death for this old boar. Aella hurls him in. The serpents strike, but Ragnar does not scream. Instead, as the poison courses through his veins and death closes in, he sings a final, defiant death song that would echo through the ages. How the little pigs would grunt if they knew what the old boar suffers. Those words, carried on the wind and across the sea, were no idle curse. They were a prophecy, because Ragnar's sons were listening, and what they unleashed in response would be far more savage, far more calculated, and far more world-changing than any single act of vengeance the History Channel could ever cram into one gripping episode. Let's go back. Ragnar Lothbrok, the hairy breeches warrior, slayer of dragons in legend, raider of Paris in history's shadows, had sailed to England with just 2 ships, driven by the same restless hunger that defined the Viking Age. Arrogant? Perhaps. Overconfident? Absolutely. But when Aella's superior forces overwhelmed him, the king chose not quick steel, but slow, humiliating torment in that snake pit. Little did Aella know he had just lit the fuse on the greatest Viking invasion Britain had ever seen. News of Ragnar's agonizing death reached his sons across the North Sea, and their reactions, as the ancient tale of Ragnar's sons' records, revealed exactly who they were. Sigurd's snake in the eye gripped a knife so tightly it sliced to the bone, yet he felt no pain. Björn Ironside clutched a spear until the imprint of his fingers remained forever in the wood. Hvitserk, mid-game, crushed a game piece in his fist until blood ran. But it was Ivar the Boneless, the brilliant, leg-crippled mastermind, who stayed ice-cold. He listened to every gruesome detail. Then he smiled, and he began to plan. Ivar knew brute force alone would not suffice. This revenge had to be total. It had to break kingdoms, not just one man. So in 865 AD, the brothers Ivar, Ubbe, Halfdan, sometimes called another of Ragnar's line, Sigurd, Hvitserk, and the legendary Björn Ironside forged something unprecedented. The Mysil here, the Great Heathen Army. Thousands of hardened warriors from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden answered the call. Not a mere raiding party. This was a conquest force, ships blackening the horizon, horses soon to be seized, banners flying the Raven of Odin. Their stated goal, according to the Norse sagas, pure vengeance for their father. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle simply calls them invaders. But history would prove the truth lay somewhere bloodier in between. They landed first, in East Anglia. The locals, terrified, handed over horses and supplies just to survive the winter, but the sons were in no rush. They overwintered at Thetford, sharpening blades, forging alliances, letting fear spread like plague. Then, in late 866, they struck north like a storm. York the rich, Roman-walled trading heart of Northumbria, fell almost without a fight on November 21. The 2 rival Northumbrian kings, Osbert and Aella, were caught off guard. They patched up their own civil war, just long enough to march on the city. Big mistake. The clash outside York's walls in 867 was brutal. The Viking shield wall held. The English lines broke. Both kings died in the slaughter. But Aella, the man who had fed Ragnar to snakes, was taken alive. Imagine the moment. The sons standing over their father's killer, the same pitiless gaze Ragnar once wore. Ivar, ever the strategist, had waited years for this. He even tricked Aella into thinking peace might be possible. The king walked right into the trap. Now came the ritual that would become infamous. The Blood Eagle. According to the tale of Ragnar's sons, the brothers gathered, recalling exactly how their father had suffered. Then, they ordered it done. A skilled carver, some accounts say a woodworker pressed into service, laid Aella face down. With precise, agonizing cuts, they carved the shape of an eagle into his back. Then, sword in hand, they severed every rib from the spine, cracking them outward like wings. The lungs were pulled free through the gaping wounds, still pulsing, laid out across the eagle's spread ribs so they fluttered in the wind like living sails. Some versions, Like Saxo Grammaticus, add the final horror, salt rubbed into the raw flesh, to prolong the torment. Aella did not die quickly. He lingered in unspeakable pain, a deliberate echo of the slow death in the snake pit. The sagas say they dedicated the offering to Odin, a victory sacrifice, poetic justice carved in bone and blood. And yes, modern scholars debate whether the blood eagle was ever truly performed. Some call it later Christian exaggeration. Others note, a 2022 study proved it anatomically possible with Viking tools. But in the legend that shaped centuries, it happened exactly like that. One king's screams became the death knell for an entire Anglo-Saxon order. But here's the twist that makes the real story far more brutal than any TV dramatization. The Blood Eagle was only the beginning. The sons didn't sail home in triumph. They stayed. And they turned personal vengeance into national conquest. With Northumbria broken, they installed a puppet ruler and used York, now Jorvik, as their fortress. Then south they marched. In 869 they returned to East Anglia, captured King Edmund, later Saint Edmund the Martyr, tied him to a tree, and, legend says, shot him full of arrows until he resembled a hedgehog, all because he refused to renounce Christ or share his kingdom. Churches burned, monasteries emptied of gold, entire villages vanished. By 871, the army, now reinforced by a great summer army, slammed into Wessex, the last major English holdout. Battles raged at Reading, Basing, Ashdown. Alfred, not yet the Great, and his brother King Ethelred fought desperately. Bagsec, one of the Viking leaders, fell. But the English paid Danelaw to buy breathing room. The Vikings wintered in London, then back north to crush a Northumbrian rebellion, then into Mercia. King Burgred fled overseas. A weak puppet took his throne. Repton became their next winter camp, a site where archaeologists later found a mass grave possibly holding Ivar himself. Year after year, the campaign ground on 865 to 878, longer than most wars. They split the army strategically. Halfdan took Northumbria, shared the land among his men, and they began to farm it. True settlers now, not just raiders. The rest, under Guthrum, a later commander, pushed deeper into Wessex. Alfred was driven into the marshes, but at Edington, in 878, he turned the tide. The Vikings were defeated. Guthrum surrendered, was baptized, and signed the Treaty of Alfred and Guthrum, and thus was born the Danelaw, a vast swathe of northern and eastern England, where Scandinavian law, language, and blood took root. York thrived as a Viking capital. Danish words entered English forever. England itself was forever changed, split in two, then slowly forged into something new. The sons of Ragnar? Ivar the Boneless ruled briefly in Ireland and York, before legend claims he died. Ubbe fell fighting in the west. Halfdan carved out a kingdom in the north. Sigurd Snake in the Eye's bloodline would one day touch English thrones. Björn Ironside sailed on to legend elsewhere. Their revenge had toppled kingdoms, redrawn maps, and left a scar and a legacy across the British Isles. So, was it all true? Was Ragnar even real? Historians still argue. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records the army, but never mentions snakes or eagles. The sagas, written centuries later, weave myth and memory. Yet the bones don't lie. Mass graves at Repton, Scandinavian DNA in modern England, the Danelaw's legal echoes. And that single line in an 11th century poem, Knutsdrápa, Ivar had Ella's back cut with an eagle. The revenge of Ragnar's sons was never just about one man in a snake pit. It was about an unstoppable wave that nearly drowned Anglo-Saxon England, and in doing so, helped birth the nation we know today. The little pigs didn't just grunt, they roared. And the old boar's death song became the soundtrack of a new age. The Vikings had come to stay, and history would never forget.